On this episode of the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, we have a very special guest. Erik van Rooyen joins the show, two-time PGA Tour winner, to talk about playing for the Minnesota Golden Gophers back in the day, but also what life is like on tour, specifically as it pertains to his equipment. A lot of great conversation with Erik in this one. And also we talk about the latest, what's happening on tour, the Genesis Invitational, all kinds of equipment swaps we got to talk about, plus some new products out there for us to talk about and test. And there's also videos out as well. So stay tuned for another great episode of the Second Swing Thoughts podcast. Hey golfers, and welcome back to the Second Swing Thoughts podcast. I'm Drew Mahold, joined by Sean Bauer back in the studio for but this is great. This is another one where we've got an awesome guest. Erik van Rooyen joins. We asked him a lot about basically how he handles his golf equipment on tour, whether it's the process of swapping things in and out, testing new things. It was fascinating to hear his take on that and how he kind of interacts with the tour truck. And of course, some of the clubs that are in his bag. So fun stuff with him. And then also some big event, the Genesis Invitational, moved of course to Torrey Pines, but a fascinating tournament that turned out to be as well. So that and obviously a whole lot more in this episode, Sean. It's a good one.
Yeah, should be a really good one. Yeah, Erik was great. Just kind of hearing his insights into why he chooses what equipment and what it would take to swap something out. His favorite club. Then he also, has some advice for amateur golfers.
Yes.
So really good segment. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But and he'll be teeing it up this week, down in Mexico. That's actually where he talked to us from.
Yeah.
Looked a lot warmer down there. But so that's coming up this week. But this past week, of course, was the Genesis Invitational, and that's where we're going to start with the turn. Big winner of the week. He one of the youngest rising stars in the PGA Tour, just in golf in general. Ludvig Aberg. The big Swede came from behind. He had 3 or 4 birdies there on the back 9. There was a big stretch where he kind of caught Maverick McNeely, who kind of looked like he was comfortably ahead, and then all of a sudden, Aberg went on this run, and then of course ended up getting up and down for birdie on 18 there. Second career win. I think he's just starting to scratch the surface of what kind of golfer he can be. But it was a good tournament. Yeah,
it was, and I think for Aberg, he was maybe missing. He had a PGA Tour win. I think it was one of his first few starts. He won the RSM Classic a couple years ago, and then he hadn't really earned that second signature win. Right? It was that RSM's kind of a limited field event. But he had been contending over and over in big events like this. Obviously, Augusta last year, he was right there. And so it wasn't a surprise to see him break through here and to see in the fashion that he did too as well, birdieing, was it 4 in the last 6 holes there to kind of overtake McNeely's lead. Very impressive stuff. He's got one of the most pure golf swings on tour. And, looking at his bag, too, he kind of has, it's a unique sort of set as well, because as a Titleist guy, he's got a lot of Titleist stuff. He also made a kind of a rather interesting choice to change out his driver before the final round. And also got a putter he's been using for some time by the looks of it as well.
Yeah, let's go into that bag. Yeah, he starts it off, for most of the tournament, he was using a Titleist GT2.
Yep.
But obviously switched that up for the final round. He went back to his TSR2. Now, I'd be curious kind of to know, what went into that decision, because from the statistics, he was, with his GT, he was 6th in stroke gains off the tee in round 1, led the field in round 2, 27th in round 3, and then round 4, he finished 37th, actually lost strokes to the field. So he obviously was looking for something. He wanted something for whether it was the conditions or what he was trying to do. There was a reason. I'd be curious to hear, exactly why. But yeah, he goes with the GT2/TSR2 for a round, and then fairway woods. This is where he ventures away from Titleist for the first time. He goes with a pair of TaylorMade Stealth 2 fairway woods. Goes 3 wood at 15 degrees, and then a 7 wood, which you're starting to see more and more people put these in and combo it with that longer wood. Then he goes just straight 4 to pitching wedge, Titleist T100s. Wedges, Vokey SM10s, so, pretty standard there. And then he gets down to his putter, an Odyssey White Hot Versa #1.
Yeah, which that Versa series is, I think, almost a decade old now. It's why you saw that resurgence of Jailbird the last couple of years. Is that it's a similar technology. This is just obviously in a blade, but that kind of the white and black stripes vertically. There's kind of some research behind how visually, it'll help with lining a player up, and so that's why you see that Versa technology still around, and they're kind of re-employing it into their designs. But obviously, Aberg is playing a putter that's, if you look at the images on golfwx.com, the putter sole is just worn. I mean, it's so worn out. So he clearly has been using this one for some time. I also wanted to mention that I think he's relatively unique in that his iron shafts and his wedge shafts are the same. KBS Tour 130X. It's rare you see that. Usually players opt for kind of a softer feel with their wedges. That is, I think he's in the minority there of players that play the same shaft irons down through their wedges.
Yeah. Well, as we saw, he made an equipment change for one round for his driver. There was a lot of equipment changes for the tournament, or just, some clubs that we wanted to highlight that really caught our eye. Obviously, first up, the number one player in the world, Scotty Scheffler, took out one of his Strixon utility irons. In place of it, he used a QI 35 7-wood. He was playing at about 19.75 degrees, I think what I saw TaylorMade put out there. So playing, a little stronger, almost like a 6-wood. Mm-hmm. But he put that in, and kind of the reason why was, the rough out at Torrey is so thick that with an iron, you're struggling to get it up the hole, right? Move the ball forward as much. So he put that in there, and then also to give him something that'll, fly a little higher. And you saw it on was it Thursday or Friday when he hit one? It was just an insane shot.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's this element of when you have thick rough, you see it in U.S. Opens, right? When that rough gets really thick, or these events where they really trick the course out, and this is one of them. They can make Torrey pretty difficult with that rough. The high lofted wood is able to just get deep into the grass efficiently and underneath the ball a little bit better than a utility iron or a long iron, and so that's where you see a lot of this. That's where we're even next on the list here was Sahith Theegala using a G449 wood. I imagine that's a similar there's a similar purpose for it for him as well, is being able to hack the ball out in that rough. And then also too, like we need to talk about as well, like hitting it onto the green from a long distance is also important, and having the launch and spin that you need to. Aberg obviously hit, I would say, the clinching shot, or one of the clinching shots of the tournament with his 7-wood, being able to hit 18 and 2, have a long lag putt or a long 2-putt essentially to win the event. If he misses the green from there, with that rough, it's dicey. So there's those high lofted woods are not going away, I don't think.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Yeah, and Scotty, you heard from if you go on to Golf WX, they kind of talk to the TaylorMade, tour fitter out there of why, and he was looking for a club that was 245. His 5-wood goes about, he's saying 255, 260. So he was looking for a 245 and something to help him get out of the rough. And that's why they probably tweaked it up from, 21 degrees,
sure,
standard 7 loft, 7-wood up. And then, Sahith, he basically said, he's like, this is pretty much a club I only use out of thick rough. Said he had it at was it Pebble Beach or another tournament earlier this year, and he says he doesn't really hit it off of the fairway. He says he can get the ball high out of the fairway, but he struggles with kind of controlling the flight. But for just getting something out of the rough, that's why he puts that 9-wood in. So that's pretty interesting. We'll come back. There's one that I really want to talk about when we skip ahead to another, just a quick driver here. There was another tour or another equipment change. Jake Knapp. He went back a few years with a driver he put in the bag, TaylorMade M5.
This is a throwback. So this is actually the driver model that Tiger won Augusta with in 2019. So this is a driver that's 6 years old. It's fascinating. So he clearly, talented player. He hits the ball pretty far. He's got a lot of swing speed. But to see him go back this far, there's clearly something that, he likes visually about this driver and or audibly with the sound of it. But it speaks volumes. Matt Driver, it was very successful at the time, clearly still is for Jake Knapp. He's one of the better drivers of the golf ball in the game. And so fascinating to see someone go back that far in golf equipment.
Hey, man, I played the predecessor to the M5. I got the M3 in the bag. So, it's not that old, Drew.
I mean, 6 years old for these guys is a long time.
But speaking of old, here is probably my favorite equipment change of the tournament. Daniel Berger, who, he was competing last week. he had played these 2011 TaylorMade, tour preferred MCs forever. I mean, 2011, that's, 14, 15 years now, 14 years, my math's bad. So obviously a club that he liked and just never wanted to change.
Yep.
Well, then you go out last at the Waste Management, and he's playing Ping Blueprint S. Obviously, it takes a lot for someone that's been playing the same club that long to switch it up. And pretty much what he was saying was that, 5 through pitching wedge, everything was still pretty similar. But it was once he got into the longer irons, that's where he kind of noticed the difference in the Ping Blueprint S compared to other clubs that he was testing. That's ultimately why he pulled the trigger on them.
Yep.
And he also just mentioned that he really wants to, he doesn't want to just play these a tournament. If he hits a couple bad shots, go back. He wants to give them, a true, month or so of really playing with them, seeing what he can get out of them. So
yeah, I saw there was a report. I don't know if it was from Golf DBRX or was from another, equipment insider, so to speak, out on tour. But they had mentioned that Berger received the set of Blueprint S irons midway through last year, and so he had them and was unable to pull the trigger, so to speak, on putting them in the bag for all this time. And you wonder. He mentions I'm going to give him a fair shot, and so maybe he wasn't quite giving the Blueprint S the time that it needs, or the enough rounds or enough shots to give it a true assessment. When you play a set of MCs for 13, 14 years, it obviously can be very tough for someone like him to remove a club or remove a set of irons out of the bag. So that's fascinating. Again. There's all this talk about new technology, new golf clubs. We're that time of year where new stuff's being released, and that's where all the attention goes. But there are a lot of players out there that find something and they stick with it for 6 years. You got a 6-year-old driver in Jake Knapp's bag, or even 14 years in the case of Berger's irons.
Yeah. Somewhere Kevin Kraft is smiling here in the Blueprint S.
Yes.
Because he just loved those irons. So
absolutely.
And speaking of irons, new addition to the TaylorMade lineup this week. Went on pre-sale on Tuesday. The 2025 TaylorMade P790. Drew, you got to kind of go test these out with Austin over in the Bay. And, what were just your impressions of, one of TaylorMade's, signature iron series? Yeah,
I mean, the P790s, when it comes to distance and ball speed in the player's distance category, you're not going to find anything better, I don't think. The club face has been hot through the last 4 iterations of P790, so that's not new to see that in this one, but I think where they've improved is consistency with the ball speed when you miss the center of the face, but also with the spin rates as well. We saw that with Austin, where he had a couple of swings that weren't, he was hitting it around the club face a little bit, but to see the spin rate not deviate not nearly as much as I would have thought was the part that I took away from that. So that video is up on YouTube, a swing report on the P790 irons. So go check that out. And again, I think the look is clean as it always has been. That part's not new. A lot of the same technologies are in there. Speed foam air is in there. They've got a sound stabilization bar internally to kind of improve that sound and feel. Then that through slot speed pocket on the sole still there to help with those low face strikes. So the technology's all there. It's fast. It's a fantastic iron, but a little bit more consistent, I think, this year than past models.
Yeah, and I know that they had kind of a sturdier or a stronger steel in the club face that was supposed to allow that sweet spot get a little bigger. Obviously, you're seeing, like you saw with Austin, the spins are staying, pretty dang close to each other no matter who you're hitting it, and that kind of shows that sweet spot is indeed a little bit bigger.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think the number TaylorMade says 24% bigger, and I think there was some of that showed out in the data. It was, again, a small, just kind of a first initial impressions test, but I think it's gonna be a really good iron for players.
All right. Well, let's. That wraps up the turn here. So we got a few more equipment news down at the end of the show, but I think it's time to get into the main event here.
Yeah, Erik van Rooyen. Again, we've teased it enough already, but this was awesome opportunity for us to get to talk to somebody playing on tour literally this week at the Mexico Open. So he talks just a little bit about what's in his bag, the process of swapping something out. He talks a lot about what his favorite club is. He doesn't really hide that fact from us in the interview, and just in general the sense that he gets from players on tour about testing new equipment. It's fascinating to hear his insights from inside the ropes there, so to speak. So without further ado, here's Erik van Rooyen. Now welcoming on the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, we have a very special guest, a 2-time PGA Tour winner, and I guess for us as a Minnesota-based company also, this special guest has some ties to the state of Minnesota. It is Erik van Rooyen. Erik, first of all, thank you for joining us. You're out kind of on the road here with your PGA Tour season underway here. Thank you for taking the time. How are things going?
Things are great, man. Things are really good. Family's doing well. I'm out in Mexico. I love being in Mexico. I feel like I've always played well coming here for some reason. So yeah, things are good.
Yeah, you have definitely had some memorable finishes at this event here in Mexico. I wanted to kick things off because right now as we're recording this in Minnesota, I believe it was like minus 20 degrees this morning here. So I wanted to kick off with that because we're actually after this going to record some content with the Gophers men's golf head coach Justin Smith, and so I wanted to kind of harken back to your days at playing for the Gophers. And I wanted to ask about the kind of the experience being in a winter climate, during that time of year, and then going out and competing against teams in that southern climate. Was there kind of a chip on your shoulder during those times? What was it like to be playing for Minnesota and then dealing with the winter all the time?
Yeah, it was tricky. Even for me coming over from South Africa, it was something I've never really had to deal with. Um, And, the kids now on the team have it so much better than we even had it. We had this um, little trailer that was heated up, and we'd had to hit balls, and hopefully your driver doesn't hit the top of the roof,
Right.
and, go pick our balls. And it was okay. It wasn't fantastic. Now, obviously, they've got this beautiful facility that's indoors. Um, but yeah, at first it was tricky. It was almost a bit of a shock to the system for me. Um, but you get used to it. You learn to love it. Um, and you're absolutely right. You almost do have a bit of a chip on your shoulder. Um, like when you go down south, you play against, schools down in Florida, or Texas, or even, California, where the weather is always beautiful, and you've always feel like you've got something to prove when you go to those events.
Is that something that maybe you've taken kind of to, now your career on the PGA Tour? I mean, not that you're thinking all the time, oh wow, I got to think back to when I was a Gopher, playing against these teams from the South. But there's probably an element of that motivation or maybe that determination that you take in these events where, you've got sort of there's an added element of competitiveness there probably that you maybe kind of took with you from your days with the Gophers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it almost becomes part of your makeup. So, um, when times get hard here on tour and you're perhaps not making as many cuts or perhaps not competing as often as you'd like, moments like that kind of stick with you. It's like, well, hang on, I've been through hard times as a golfer. I know what it feels like to play in 25-degree weather in Illinois tournament where it's sleeting and it's a 36-hole day.
Right.
I can do this, so yeah, it definitely becomes part of your makeup.
And now, as for Second Swing Golf, we're a very equipment centric company. That's a lot of the viewers and listeners that are looking at this right now and listening to you are interested in golf equipment and the gear side of things. And so that's kind of where we're going to maybe steer things here a little bit, because I think there's an interest in someone at your level and the process that is required to maybe put a club in the bag or the testing that you might do with a new golf club. I know you're working closely with Callaway for a lot of your
Mhm.
equipment needs, but could you kind of just walk through, I guess, first of all, just the clubs that you're playing in your bag, and then we'll kind of talk through some of that process of, what it takes for you to replace something in the bag.
Yeah, great question. I think this year, for some reason, I've been more open to testing new things. There's a 7 wood in the bag that might replace the 3 iron that I have, depending on
Mm,
the golf course we play. I'm looking at stuff like that. I've dabbled with different wedge grinds a lot. Obviously, the new Callaway drivers out, which has been fantastic to put in the bag as well. So I feel like previous in the past, I've been um, almost closed off because I really enjoyed what I played. However, when you're a bit too closed off, you don't know what new stuff is out there that might actually be able to help you. So, um, yeah, I really enjoy, or I've come to enjoy sort of tinkering and messing about, whether it's a new shaft or say a hybrid club that might come in a bit higher and softer into the greens. The putter is something that nobody touches. Leave my putter alone. So yeah, it kind of depends. Like I said, from course to course, I've got about 17 or 18 clubs that I travel with every week. And the arrangement of clubs in the bag might change depending on the course we're playing.
Right, and you'll probably make adjustments to the exact configuration of your setup, maybe even day by day, right? Depending on if it's a windy day versus a calm day. I imagine that's something maybe you and your caddy are talking about, maybe on the range before your round, or one of those conversations, depending on the day, even that you might say swap out that 3-iron for the 7-wood, for example. Is that
Yeah.
is that something that you test them out on the range and get a feel for it, or is it just kind of something right away? All right, well, today's a windy day. I'm going to take out the 7-wood and put in the 3-iron.
Yeah, you make a great point. And that kind of came into play at Torrey Pines at the Farmers a couple of weeks back. Torrey, obviously notoriously known for quite heavy rough. It's a long golf course. Fairways are quite narrow, so you're going to be playing up the rough, and the 3-iron just you can't even hit it. So the 7-wood, they go about similar yardages, so the 7-wood just gets it out the rough a bit easier. I've also got a mini driver and a 3-wood that I might interchange. This week here in Mexico, the course is quite open. It's long, so you might see me put the mini driver in play instead of the 3-wood. There's a par 5 or 2 where I might have about 280 to the front. 3-wood goes about 270. So the mini driver, I might hit that off the deck to get to some of the par 5s and 2. It might not be a morning of decision, but it's something that we talk about sort of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday when we walk the course and look at the conditions.
And then as another element to this, when you're testing specific, clubs or even like products to put in the bag, is there, obviously there's, for most players, I know there's probably a testing element where you're swinging and hitting golf shots. For you, are you kind of looking at the ball flight, seeing how it feels, seeing how the ball flies? Or is it more of I need to know what my numbers are, my launch monitor numbers, and you kind of base it more off of that? Or maybe it's a little bit of both for you.
Yeah, initially it's let's say we talk about driver testing. Initially, it's just looking at it and seeing, okay, this really looks good from the top. A kind of quirky thing about my setup, I have a flat cog in my shaft, and so the head's always a bit flat. So for some reason, I like the look, um, and so it's always like, okay, what does this driver look like when I set it down behind the ball? And then, like you said, it's first just flights. What does it look like when I'm hitting it off the toe? What does it look like out the heel? I've got this low kind of fairway finder driver that I hit. What does that flight look like? And then I like go to TrackMan and look at the numbers and compare it to the current gamer that's in the bag. So yeah, it's a longer process that I'd like to, because they come out with drivers every year, and I might really like the one I've got in the bag, and now I've got to hit 150 balls with the new one. But generally, Galloway's been fantastic with making small little changes recently, and I've, like I said in the past, I've been reluctant to switch, and I feel like the last few years the new driver has just gone right in the bag. So. But yeah, that's generally kind of the testing process. With wedges, which I change wedges quite regularly. Like my 60, I probably change it every other week. I do a lot of practice with it in the sand, and the grooves just get worn out. So with wedges, it might change weeks during, say, like the Open Championship or the Scottish Open, where the ground's really firm. Might use a little bit less bounce, or if where was it recently that the sand was really heavy? Phoenix Open. Phoenix Open yeah, Waste Management. For some reason, the sand is kind of heavy. And I play with an 8 degrees of bounce in my lob wedge, and I went down to 6 just to kind of get the club kind of underneath the ball a bit easier. So something like a wedge, it's purely on feel and then how the ball's reacting off the surface I'm playing.
So when it comes to, you mentioned kind of you're changing your 60-degree maybe once every other week, right? So it's fairly
Mhm.
often that you're, either getting a new club or getting something kind of new that's, whether it's wear and tear issue, et cetera, where you need to get your clubs basically brand spanking new, right? And so when it comes to that and needs something to be built for you, is it, what's that process like? I'm sure you're working with the team at Callaway. Maybe it's the tour van on site. Is that something where they kind of know, hey, all right, we're kind of due to build Erik a new wedge, or is it something where you maybe let them know, hey, I'm looking to get a new 60-degree in the bag this week. Can you guys whip this up for me? And they have your specs ready, or how does that all work?
Yeah, they've got a whole database of specs ready, which is fantastic. So obviously, we're really privileged with having a tour truck, and they've got everything you need. Usually they've got a 60-degree ready for me, which is fantastic. Um, but every now and then, yeah, I'm trying to think of an example. Every now and then, if I need a slight different grind, I might go in there with them and kind of talk about it and tinker around a little bit. But usually it's pretty straightforward. They've got the specs in the database, copy and paste, and here's the new club.
Right. Yeah. That'd be nice for us amateurs to have, but obviously you guys are playing at a little bit higher level than we are for a lot higher stakes. So totally understand from that perspective. When it comes to that, one thing I wanted to ask you as well, and I've got here, and I know the viewers and listeners are curious about this as well. You can go back, you can have something. Maybe it's in the bag right now, or maybe it's something that you've played in the past. Is there a favorite club that you've played before? Just in your golf career, you think back to this club and you're like, man, I hit some really good shots with this one, or maybe I putt really well with this putter.
I'd say the clubs that have been in the bag the longest have been my 3 iron. Um, it's a 21-degree kind of utility head, so a bit bigger than your normal iron head. It's been in the bag probably since 2019.
Oh wow.
Um, and then the putter, I used to change a lot, quite a bit. I've played, blade style putters. I've played mallets. Now I'm playing a Toulon San Diego, and that's also since 2019. So the two clubs that have been in the bag the longest. Um, it's hard to pick a favorite, but yeah, when like I said earlier, like don't touch my putter. That's my baby. So last year I was kind of forced to do a grip change on it because the thing was just getting so worn out, and you know getting to the point where okay, like this needs to get changed up. But otherwise, I will check the specs on it. Every couple of weeks we travel so much that a little bump during travel might change the lie angle or the loft a little bit. So I get that checked every couple of weeks or so. But otherwise, that's my baby.
Can you speak more on kind of the I asked you about it already, but kind of the process of getting something new in the bag, but even more specifically on you keep mentioning that this putter is your baby, nobody touch it, and so with that being said, like, is there, because you there's certainly a feel and a look that you just are used to and you don't want to go away from, right? And you even mentioned like you kind of didn't seem like you loved the idea of even changing your grip. You got so used to the grip on that putter that you kind of were like, well, I got to go in and change the grip. Whether it's you see this from other tour players a lot as well. They have a certain club or a certain putter that they just love and they just cannot get rid of. What would it even take for you to even try something new? Like, there's all these fads out there. We've had, there's longer length putters. There's like the sweeper or broomstick style
Mhm.
putters that people are using. Like, what would it even take? I mean, I'm not trying to throw anything different in your head right now, but like, is there a measure where that would even happen for you, or are you just so dialed in you just love your setup that again you're just never gonna mess with it?
Great question. I tinker a lot. Like we've mentioned on tour, we've got all the equipment. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they've got all the putters on tour sitting next to the putting green. So you can go mess around with any kind of Odyssey or Scotty or lab putter, whatever it is. And so I enjoy going out and trying different things. But it's just whenever I come back to the one in the bag, it's like, there it is, you know?
Right.
So I've been putting really well the last few years. So it'll be hard for me to point to the putter and go, this is the reason why I'm struggling. Um, but yeah, I think messing about, trying different things, seeing what's out there, um, seeing, well, this feels really nice. I think that's a good way to stay fresh. And then, like I mentioned, that process of coming back to your gamer, it just feels really good when it gets back in your hand. So it kind of keeps things fresh.
Right. It's kind of probably a nice little confirmation too that there's a certain confidence that you have with your putter that you try these other models, you do some tinkering as you mentioned or some testing during these events, you put something down, you hit a few putts with it and you like it, but then you get that the one then you're in your bag in your hands and you just know, okay, this is actually the one I need to be playing. I bet that's even in itself
Yeah,
kind of a confidence boost every week on tour.
100%, 100%. People that I see do it as well. Hideki does it a lot. He's messing about with other putters. He's got like a full-on hour-long practice session with a different putter, and then he shows up on Thursday with the same one he's been using. Adam Scott does the same thing. I've actually asked Scotty one time because he putts with the broomstick, right? I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing when you putt with the normal length putter? Um, is there a feel you're trying to pull from it, like, or are you just messing around? He goes, yeah. And, there's a feel I get from it, and then I go back to the broomstick and kind of try and implement that feel when I use it. So, feel plays a huge role in hitting a shot or hitting a putt. So everyone's always trying to keep that feel sharp.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's again. There's this all these behind the scenes things that I know us as gearheads were kind of imagining in our brains, like what that'd be nice to have all these putters, like in the hour that we get to the golf course for our rounds, right? No, let's just try all these different setups and see how it would work. I know, granted, we wouldn't be able to take it and see the
It's
results as
not
well
a
as you guys do.
it's actually not a bad idea for the shop to go lay out the putters there and have guys
Right.
tinker around with it. I think that's the easiest way to get a new piece of equipment in someone's hands is have them try it. So that might be an idea that they need to implement.
You know what? I might have to run that by a local course around here. Just hey, all the putters you have in the pro shop, maybe just it's a busy Saturday. The tee sheet is full. Let's just line them all up, and
100%, man.
you might that might
100%.
be that might just be a revolutionary idea there from you. That's a pretty good idea. Um, so Eric, this has been awesome. I don't want to take too much of your time, as we mentioned. You're out on the tour right now. I do have a couple final questions here as it relates to, giving. It would be awesome to get your advice for amateur players here. Speaking as an amateur myself, and we've got you here, so I'm going to poke your brain a little bit here. So the one question I have, and it would just be around maybe mistakes or things that you see playing with amateurs at their equipment. Is there any big mistakes that you notice just looking or seeing what amateurs are doing with equipment? Is there anything they maybe should be doing that they're not? Any advice as it relates to golf equipment that they're playing?
I'd say number one thing, if you're an avid golfer, do get tested. The equipment out there um, is really meant to help you, and it makes a huge difference. So go to Second Swing and get fitted for proper equipment, and play the clubs that get the ball in the air easiest. Don't play the blade that looks like a button knife because the guys on the PGA Tour play it. Play the clubs that get the ball up in the air easiest. Another thing I see amateurs do, it's maybe not quite equipment related, is in the pro-ams that we play, everybody comes up short.
Hmm.
Another thing that's great about getting fitted is actually figuring out how far your yardage is, how far the clubs go. Not the 1.7 that you flushed 3 years ago that went 155 yards or whatever, but actually have an understanding of, I've hit 20 shots with this club. What's kind of the average distance it flies? Because everybody ends up coming short. So, which, on the one hand, I kind of get, because you might not get the spin rates to land the ball on the green and stop it. But yeah, getting it for your equipment makes a huge difference, and then understanding how far the ball goes.
Yeah, I mean that's a strong message that we always try to send to golfers out there, and it is always kind of a huge refreshing feeling for players when they get fit, and it's like, wow, this is what I was missing out on. It could be 25 yards with the driver that they didn't know they had in them. So and then now as it pertains to actually in terms of the skill of the game, right, and developing your game, what would be, you've mentioned and kind of referred to these pro-ams that you play with, and you're playing with golfers that are obviously very enthusiastic about the game, but they might be missing out on something. We talked about equipment-wise. Now, how about like skill and game-wise? Is there anything that you would say for players if they're trying to get better at something, or maybe trying to improve their handicap from, say, 10 to 5 this year, whatever it might be? What is, I guess, the best way for golfers to get better and see their scores get lower?
I think you made a good point. I think it depends on what kind of handicap bracket you're in. If you're trying to get to a single-digit handicap, it's probably, I'd say kind of the finer things, like somewhere around the green, getting one or two more balls up and down. So chipping, I'd look at. If it's someone, that's around a 16 or 17 handicap, drivers where you're going to score the most shots. Obviously, most people I play with kind of have the over-the-top move with an open face and the ball goes right. So learning how to get the club square in the ball and hitting a hook that's going to go the furthest, that's where you're going to find your biggest gains.
Yeah, that is a common theme that we see as well. There's percentages thrown around in terms of golfers that struggle with the slice, but you see a lot of it in the fittings here for sure. So, well, Erik, this has been awesome. We appreciate your time, giving your insights here on kind of the equipment world, if you will, that you're in every week on tour. Obviously, we wish you the best of luck both this week and the rest of the season. Again, we greatly appreciate your time, and it's been awesome to have you here. I know the viewers, listeners are going to appreciate it. So, Erik, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, and good luck.
Thanks, guys, and stay warm up there. Take care.
Yeah. And that was Erik van Rooyen, former Minnesota Golden Gopher and now PGA Tour player. That was awesome to have him join us. And I think it shows there's a level of gear junkie, and kind of there's an obsession with golf equipment that it's another level, I think, where these guys on tour and some of the the weird quirks that they might have with their clubs, but then also it's kind of cool to get his insight and advice for players like us when it's time to dial in equipment and or even get better at the game.
Yeah, I thought it was great, and I have to agree with him. The weather up here isn't so great. It's been very, very, very cold this week,
yes.
So I hope he really enjoys his time down in Mexico and gets to enjoy that warm weather. I know we're just itching for the bit up here to get some sort of warm weather again. We had seen what was a mild winter, and then Mother Nature played a mean joke on us. Yeah, great stuff from Erik. Wish him luck this week. Hopefully he plays well, and maybe we'll have some more stuff with him coming up later. Yeah,
I mean, it was cool to chat with him, and he's as cool as they come. So on the YouTube channel this week, you'll find that interview as well. Also, you'll see Live at Lunch this Thursday. Last week, we talked to Tyler Fitzel about some of the best drivers from 2024 in terms of we had a survey with our fitters. Our Fitters' Choice Awards. We're going to do that with irons this week. So if you're looking for a new iron set this year, but don't want to spend maybe top dollar for something that was just released, you're going to have a lot of options in that particular segment, where we're going to go talk through the irons in various categories. And then also, when Kevin was in town, and that's not a secret, we've got a segment with him next week on the podcast. And then we also filmed a ton of video content with him in the Bay testing basically it was 2025 product versus 2024. So you can kind of get a feel for a lot of these products and how they progressed in the 1 year over 1 year. So a lot of those coming to the YouTube channel as well. Leading with this week, I believe we've got the Paradigm AS Smoke Driver and Callaway Elite Driver. I think that's on Friday that'll be published. So that'll be kind of the first one of that little series, so to speak.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if the Elite does go, up to 8 yards further or not. So,
right.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And yeah, we do have Kevin Kraft coming up next week. We had thought maybe he'd be this week, and then we were able to set something up with Erik, so we kind of mixed around. But so make sure you tune in next week. It's one of our favorite episodes every year. Kevin gives us his best clubs of the year, just from initial testing here and whatnot. And then he also reflects on his 2024 list to see if he agrees with what
I think he was kind of surprised at what he said was his best club. I mean, because we did it a year ago, so it was early in the year.
Yeah.
But we told him what his picks were at the time, and he kind of he was, I think, surprised at what he chose. So But anyway, that was a great conversation.
Great stuff. And then next week is also the first of, we kind of have some of these mini series coming up. They're a part of the Second Swing Thoughts podcast. But this one is called the Coach's Corner. It's with the University of Minnesota men's golf coach Justin Smith. Mm-hmm. He's going to take us inside, throughout this series, inside, the U of M golf team, and how they handle being a northern school playing a sport that you need to be outside for, and kind of how they've handled adjusting to that. And he goes into the technology they use to help, and pretty much everything you want to know about what goes into college golf. Yeah. He gives a great perspective from the coaching side, and as a former player,
right?
He does that too.
Yeah, so. Justin won a national championship with the Gophers in the early 2000s as a player. Now he's the head coach there, and so we've got some fun conversations with him on just how the dynamics of college golf have changed. New technology that's being used by these players that don't have a golf course to use up in Minnesota for several months of the year. And he's also got some fun guests lined up in the future that will join. He'll have some fun conversations there as well. So stay tuned for that one. Again, next week is the first sort of segment of the Coach's Corner.
Yeah, that'll be the Coach's Corner. And then the week after that, stay tuned. We got a couple of very, very good golfers joining us for a month-long series that you're really going to enjoy. That's all I'm going to tell you. So, keep your eyes out for that. But yeah, and then on the Second Swing side, obviously, P790s went on pre-sale earlier this week, so you can pre-order yours. All of our fitting bays should have them by now. So if you're looking to get fit into those, schedule fitting there. The Callaway Elite TI Fairway Wood goes on pre-sale here on the 21st. Obviously, Callaway Elite's their newest lineup, and this is kind of the titanium version of their fairway wood. Kind of going in line with their titanium irons and the platinum wedges. So kind of a little higher end, higher performing club. And then in stores this week, you will have, the Mizuno M Craft putters and the Pro T1 and T3 wedges, along with some...
Which they dare not sleep on those, because those are two really good product series that, Mizuno's put a lot of time and research into, and we found out about those at the PGA show. Those are excellent. So if you're interested in improving your short game in 2025, Mizuno is a great way to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Drew, it's been a great week. It was good to be back this week, and not having to miss out, because I just enjoy this every week. We get to do it. So
let's hope the weather gets warmer here. I think this morning it was about minus 20 degrees up here in Minnesota. So golfers, stay tuned. As always, we release the episodes once per week. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast platform that you're listening to this on, and we'll see you next week on the Second Swing Thoughts podcast.